But I think when it comes to anything like that, the most important thing isn't the camera, isn't the mics, it's not the lights, but it's the audience. Because if you lose the audience, then everything you've done's immaterial because no one's going to see it. So the most important thing is the audience, which is why shaky handheld cameras can still work if the audience is engaged with what the story you're capturing. So that's the first part of it. The second part is, we've got to be honest, we have incredibly short attention spans these days. 10 years ago, we used to say it was 12 seconds, but now we think it's gone down to 2 or 3 seconds before you, and that's perhaps being generous, before you click away from something or scroll away. So the cold hard truth is this: the audience is the most important thing. And around about 2 or 3 seconds in, they're thinking about leaving your video, because there's billions of us to choose from. So that's what we're faced with. And actually that kind of puts us in a good position, because we go, okay, right, so how do we deal with this?
As we're about to dive into another fascinating episode, can I ask you to help us out, please? If you'll subscribe and join our growing community, it'll mean a lot to us. You'll be helping our show to reach many more people, and you'll be part of a growing community of truly resilient entrepreneurs. Thank you. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome to our community of resilient entrepreneurs. Rob Glass is our guest today. He's a thought leader in video production and storytelling. You might have asked yourself over your time as an entrepreneur, can do-it-yourself video really transform my business? Well, Rob has 20 plus years experience. He has produced over 2,000 videos. He's trained over, get this, 80,000 students in effective video storytelling. If there's anyone who can answer that question, I think it's Rob Glass. He will share his insights into democratizing video making. We're going to find out what that really means. He's a BBC trained presenter, and the rest of the story we'll let Rob tell you. You're listening to Resilient Entrepreneurs, the podcast where we speak with business owners from all around the world and from all walks of life, in the hopes that something you hear here today will leave your business a little richer. Our business, 2-for-1 branding, supports new entrepreneurs as you launch your business. We offer you the tools you need to succeed, which is exactly the reason that we invite experienced, successful people like Rob to share their wisdom and insights with you on this podcast. And of course, we'd love to ask this one small thing of you, a small thing that has a big impact. If you love this show and you find it helpful, please subscribe to the show on the platform you're listening or watching on right now. What that will do is we'll make sure that you get notification of the next great episode, and you'll know that you're sharing the love so that this gets on the playlist of so many more people who need it and love it too. You will be helping someone to discover and strengthen the resilient entrepreneur within them. Rob Glass, welcome. It is wonderful to have you on the show.
Lovely to be here as well. Thank you ever so much for sort of thinking of me and inviting me on.
Well, we're excited to geek out over all things video and storytelling. So let's start with your story. Can you tell me what your childhood story is all about?
Yes. Funnily enough, when you start to think about how did it all start, I can trace it back to when I was 3. And I can remember that quite clearly because we moved house when I was 3 and I was still at that school. So it was definitely 3 and not kind of 5 or something much older than that. But I remember being in, I don't know what you call it, a PE class, physical education, gym class. And the teacher said, okay, everyone, just get down on your floor and on your hands, on your feet. And then that's good. And then balance on one hand and one foot. And I can remember going diagonally opposite. And I was going, that should work quite well, Rob. Yeah, that seems to be working. And I looked around that all my classmates were going for the hand and feet on one side and they were all toppling over. I went super cracked to this one, Rob. And I do remember the teacher going, we all spoke like this, well done, Rob. Well done, Rob. Rob seems to have got the idea of it over there. And I've tracked it back to that because that was the day that I was sort of encouraged to think differently. And it is a good thing, or definitely not a bad thing. And it's to be encouraged, whereas it could have gone either way that way. I could have been encouraged not to think differently and all the pressures that come on fitting in with the norm. So at the age of 3, I thought, right, thinking differently is okay. And that's kind of followed me right through school, through university, I was an engineer for a while after university and leaving that and thinking I like radio and all that kind of thing. So it's always kind of been implanted in me, this idea that thinking differently is okay, which I think I was very lucky to have a sort of teacher to encourage that in me, I think.
Very lucky. What a gift.
Yeah. I can remember something else as well around that time. Strangely looking at, still in that house, I still must have been 3, I saw a weather presenter on our black and white television. and just thinking, trying to eat my meal, going, well, if I'm going to be a weather presenter, I really need to start drawing a map on that wall over there with my crayons. I thought, that's a bit of hard work. I won't bother. So luckily for my parent, I didn't bother. I remember having the idea. And sure enough, after I left university, was an engineer, went into radio, went for a screen test as a weather presenter as a joke because all my friends egged me on to. And I ended up becoming a TV weather presenter after all. So I'd had the idea around about 3 and dismissed it, cracked on with my education.
You took the long way around there to get there, that's all. And
who knows, just by thinking differently and sort of stepping out of engineering into radio, which I ended up loving. And that came through thinking differently at university. Me and a friend in our third year discovered we hadn't joined any societies, and that's what university was all about. So we joined hang gliding, and he wanted to do radio. I wanted to do hang gliding. He wanted to do radio. He embarrassed himself at the cheese and wine, drank too much wine, embarrassed himself at the hang gliding. So we couldn't do that anymore, couldn't show our faces there again. But the radio worked, and we both ended up loving it and sort of having our own show for a few years. And that's what led me away from engineering into the BBC radio, because I realised I had a passion for that kind of thing. And again, just not being scared to sort of make a change, I suppose. Yeah, which led to the television job. And so what they were doing, they had TV monitors all around the radio and the television because they're the same building. So we were in radio going, look at all these people coming for a screen test for a weather presenter, and we were sort of giggling at how sort of wooden they were and frozen. And they said, you should have a go. I said, no. And so 4 people said, you should have a go at the screen test. I thought, oh, God, all right. But because I knew my friends were watching, I didn't get wooden. I did a bit, well, quite a lot. But I was sort of cracking jokes, not very good ones, you can imagine, to my friends. And that kind of worked to the other people that were kind of worked in television and were looking for a weather presenter. That sort of worked as well in my favour. So, yeah, like I said, I ended up becoming a TV weather presenter, and the terror that involves.
I was going to say terror, absolute terror. Most people, the thought of being on video is so terrifying, and it stops them, right? It stops them from doing things for their business. It stops them from speaking to the news when they want to launch their business, because we work with people at the launch stage of business, and we find that video, most people are really terrified of. How do you get over that? Like, stage fright is such a big thing. How have you sort of pushed past that?
Yeah, that's possibly when I do sort of in-person training. And that's the biggest thing about video, is not the cameras anymore and how to clip the edit. It's how to sort of be natural in front of the camera. To be clear, I don't think I've ever really totally got over it. It's always kind of a thing, but I realised if I'm going to make a video and I need to be in it, it's just like one little ingredient. So I better push myself forward and do the best job I can. I think it really helps when we ended up at the BBC becoming video journalists. You sort of making films on your own. So you didn't have to ask someone else. I think it really helps us which isn't what you just said. It helps if you are in control. You know you're filming yourself and you're going to edit it. You know you've got that kind of control. So if you mess up, you know you're not going to let that go out. It's when someone else is making it, I think the nerves sort of set in because you're not quite sure what bits they're going to use. I had someone say to me once, she can stand in front of a crowd of 300, no problem, but it's in front of a camera. I think she said it's because the mistakes live forever. And I'm going, whoa, steady, you're making it quite scary. And when I started as a TV weather presenter, honestly, I was absolutely petrified. And I remember the first time my left leg was shaking so much that I was going, oh, clouds coming in from the west. I was going, oh. And I thought, I can't put any weight on my left leg. It's going, and if this right knee gives out, I am going to just buckle. I'm going to be the first weather presenter to buckle completely. And each day I would mess up some line and I'd be cross to myself. And then after, I suppose maybe this is the trick. Do it for 6 months, and then you'll start to care a little bit less. You won't be quite so precious about it, and that sort of makes you sort of help you sort of relax a little, take the pressure off yourself somehow. Another thing I did, I don't recommend it, is to try stand-up comedy at a open mic night somewhere, because that's absolutely terrifying. So presenting in front of a camera is kind of not so bad. Is that some kind of aversion therapy or something? So I tried that just to see how terrifying that was. But I think another way is to just imagine a friend or an actor or an actress you like is standing behind the camera and sort of smiling at you is another way to try and do it. And another thing is, all those people you mentioned when you're talking to them, the people on the other side of the camera that are hearing it all or seeing it all, it's just to remember they're on your side and they want to hear what you've got to say. They're kind of rooting for you. It's not like this, hostile crowd. It's people that want you to do well and they're rooting for you. So that helps as well a little bit. But yes, it is a cold, dark glass lens you look into, which is kind of soulless, which is quite interesting, how you've got to get through that.
I love how you've just listed 4 things, 4 key points for overcoming the terror era of being on video. And as you were speaking, I was relating them to any aspect of business that might confront us. You talked about providing yourself an extreme example. So your stand-up comedy, do something more terrifying and it won't be so bad. The first point you made was do it for 6 months, which effectively means just do it regardless of how you feel and keep doing it and keep practicing it, and it's going to get better. The other thing was imagine a friendly audience, which is your business audience, right? And the fourth point, so key, is they want to hear from you. And so all four of your points about overcoming fear in front of a camera, which are so poignant, also relate to so many aspects of business.
Wow, I would never have thought of that connection had I not come and joined you two. And that one about people sort of wanting to hear from, that's something I read somewhere in training. When you're doing training, you just got to imagine that there is someone out there that, apart from all the marketing and the sales, that does need your help and will be grateful for it. And I'm guilty of forgetting that and just getting down into sort of spreadsheets and lists and going, how does this work?
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that Vicky mentioned there about people wanting, and you had mentioned about people wanting to hear from you. And that's something we often forget when we're thinking about how do we market our business and we want to get on video and talk about something. And then what holds us back is the thought of that troll that's going to come and attack us. The people are going to laugh at us because we mess up, or we look silly, or we made a mistake, or somebody's going to counteract our argument with some fact that we didn't. So we have all this that runs in the back of our mind and just put it away, put the phone away, forget it, not going to do it, right? But, we forget that hundreds of people, hopefully thousands of people, are following us on social media or our business because they want to follow us, because they're interested in something that we're doing or saying. So why are we holding ourselves back? I think it's that shift in mindset from I have to do this thing to I get to do this thing and people need this thing, and you're doing it for service rather than self. Like, it's not the self-promotion, it's the service to others. When you just make that shift in mindset, it makes it all so much easier. I think I hit that when we started this podcast. I used to be terrified to talk to people I didn't know. and most of the people we started this podcast with were people we did know for that reason, right? They were a little less scary than talking to a stranger we just met 5 minutes before we hit record, right? But you get over that by taking the action over and over and over again, and it gets a little bit easier, and then it starts to become fun. This becomes fun. So do you think people can get to the point with video, doing their own video and storytelling for their business where it's actually fun?
I hope so, yeah. I think so, yeah. And I think it's what's exciting for me and for everyone, I suppose, is how it's changing suddenly now, and certainly over the last 20 years, how it's changing at such a rate. And it's just exciting to be part of, because when we had lockdown, just as an example, BBC News over here, suddenly Zoom interviews became okay, but before they were sort of frowned upon because the quality wasn't good enough or for whatever reason. So before, I was traveling all over the UK interviewing people. I know it's not as big as America or wherever, but it was still taking up all my time driving around everywhere. And then suddenly we were allowed to do it on Zoom, and the results is different, but you're still getting the same message. So that's sort of one change that's been huge, and that's spilt over, I suppose, into this idea of people being able to use smartphones for themselves and talk about their agendas, which I think that's what's driven me for the last 10 years, is so exciting. If I was working for BBC Regional News here, what we'd be saying and how we'd be putting it together, but what would you be saying in your world, and how can you put that together? That's just really exciting, and it's still kind of uncharted territory, but to a large extent, I still think there's, if they get over that fear, and which we mentioned, where that would go, and that's kind of drives me, is going, well, if I can just give you the tools to sort of do that, what are you going to do with it? Because I don't think there's a definitive way yet. I think there's a lot more sort of things that are going to be sort of discovered, which is fun. And the fear, I still get the fear of pushing videos out there, and I shouldn't, but I still go, oh, and make myself send it going, that's good enough. But luckily I've learned you're never sure what people are going to pick up on it. It'd be something you haven't thought of, but it's almost always good. So I'm lucky I don't get a lot of people going, that wasn't very good. But it's things I don't expect. So all the things I think they're quite right, just forget them, because people are going to spot something else. So that's taking the pressure off that a little bit. But I've always thought making video is fun, and making it your own way and having your own ideas and seeing them come to life. It's creative and it's fun.
It is. And it's amazing the difference now and the advantages now that business owners have, and maybe entrepreneurs and the solo entrepreneurs, and it's just the startups, the people in that early stage. Because go back 10, 20 years, you'd have to hire a whole film crew with cameras and actors and makeup and hair. And it would be a production, and it would cost thousands of dollars to create one ad for your business. Now you can turn a phone around on yourself with a ring light and have amazing quality video, and you could just talk about your business or whatever idea you want to bring to the world and put it out on your free social media account in minutes. Like, the difference in the technology is kind of mind-blowing if you just step back from it a little bit. Right now, it sort of feels so normal, right? We have a phone in our back pocket. And I've actually caught myself calling it my camera, like telling my kids, pass me my camera. And they're like, your what? I mean, my phone, because I want to take a picture, like, because I'm thinking I want to take a picture, right? But it's just become so normal. I mean, I used to work for a newspaper, so I used to have a big sports camera with the big fancy lens, and I used to take sports photography, and I loved all of that. I still have that gorgeous camera, but do I use it anymore? No, of course not, because I can whip a phone out of my pocket and take pictures. So we have this advantage of technology, and yet most people still aren't using it.
Hit the nail on the head. I couldn't agree more. And I've sort of seen that pattern. I talked to my person I bought my big video cameras off, and they said, you need to really change it every 7 months. And it was about £5,000. And I'm going, do we? Do we? And then on the other hand, I was shown around this, I was being asked to make this video for this charity nearby. And it turns out they never got the funding. So the video they wanted to make never happened. But when they showed me around, this was kind of the pivotal point, I suppose. When they showed me around, they showed me all the work. It was for people with brain injuries. All the work was going on in the individual rooms with people that worked there and the clients, and all the brilliant art lessons and all the brilliant things that were going on, the stories. And I just thought, this is so unfair that you have to wait for a bit of funding to get someone like me with all my big cameras, etc., when iPads were just starting to get good at filming and starting to edit. If I could just show you the ropes, you could start making you pieces, not only on your own, but you say the phone's in your back pocket, and that's the whole point. It's there 24/7. So you are there when that magical moment happens. And if you can capture it, then boom. But you'd never get a camera crew in there. There's a magical moment happening. I'll sort out the funding in a minute. Get your camera crew over here. But there's also when you do have all the lights and the big cameras, they described it as, I don't know what you think about this, a whiff of propaganda. Like, do you really mean that when someone's so well framed and towing the company line? Whereas if you whip a camera out and it's someone on the ground floor going, this is happening, this is real, and this is really what we're doing, I get excited, because I think that's what video should be. It's no propaganda. It's kind of real stuff happening. And okay, so it might be a bit shaky or whatever rules you're going to throw, back those away, because it's real. And that's what's exciting, because you're there sort of when that moment happens, which is why I think it's really exciting.
I really enjoy how you reframe that, because it is true that in the past, if the video wasn't quality, we wouldn't believe it. Now, if the video is too quality, we don't believe it.
That's interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we're going towards a more real life scenario. So Rob, you've trained over 80,000 people doing this. So are you willing to share some trade secrets here? How can we help people level up?
Oh, yeah. And the biggest part of the 80,000 was, again, another stroke of luck. Like you said, for the 6 months, you just keep trying. And every 1 in 100 thing comes back good. And I was running some training in Munich for this company and their sort of boardroom and everything. And I got really excited because they were a big company, accounting company. And I said, everyone in here should be making video or know how to make it all across the whole company. And I can show them because we can get it online. And I got really excited. And they said, well, we don't need that. And I went, and sort of burst my bubble. And they said, because we use LinkedIn Learning. And I went, wonder what LinkedIn Learning is. So I was in a hotel room that night, and I searched for it, and there's a little page that came up. Do you want to be a LinkedIn Learning instructor? And I went, no one's going to read this. Yes. Tell us in 500 words what you do. Smartphone video training. That'll do. Because I didn't believe it would get anywhere. Show them a link to something I'd made in my little studio, just flapping my arms around by my desk. Sometimes luck just shines on you. And the chap phoned me and said, look, I hardly ever look at these lists. And then for some reason I picked on yours. And what happens is we're doing this series on engaging video, and it's just not engaging enough at the minute. And what on earth are you doing at your desk? Kind of doing all this kind of being engaging. Can you come and make a course for us in California? And I went, ooh, that makes up for all the times it doesn't work. How lucky. And so
real.
tens of thousands of those, 80,000 are through LinkedIn Learning and the courses we've ended up doing over there. So that's nice when life sort of throws you one of those little nuggets. So when I was at the BBC, I just thought some features worked and some features didn't. And I just thought that's just the way of the world. Some were really easy, some weren't. And, that's just what you do about it. Today, the piece came together really easily and it was really hard work on other days. But then I thought, if I'm going to train it, I need to get to the bottom of that, because if video isn't your job's something else. It needs to be the easy side. You don't want the difficult scratching your head side, because it's not going to work. So I really started to think, just took a moment to think about what I did instead of just doing it all the time. And gradually it just dawned on me through talking to people and talking to LinkedIn Learning as well, going, if we're going to make video with a smartphone or whatever, I say put the smartphone down for a bit and we spend just half an hour just having a think about what it is that makes video engaging. So I think there are sort of 3 strategies to that, which is what you asked for, I think. So the first one, and do feel free to shout in and go, I totally disagree with you, Rob, and I'll bring on my army of 80,000 students to go, we believe in Rob. I imagine they'd be saying, I haven't heard anyone disagree with me yet. Anyway, but I'd love to hear you disagree. But I think when it comes to anything like that, the most important thing isn't the camera, isn't the mics, it's not the lights, but it's the audience. Because if you lose the audience, then everything you've done's immaterial, because no one's going to see it. So the most important thing is the audience, which is why shaky handheld cameras can still work if the audience is engaged with what's the story you're capturing. So that's the first part of it. And the second part is, we've got to be honest, we have incredibly short attention spans these days. 10 years ago, we say it was 12 seconds, but now we think it's gone down to 2 or 3 seconds before you, and that's perhaps being generous, before you click away from something or scroll away. So the cold hard truth is this: the audience is the most important thing. And around about 2 or 3 seconds in, they're thinking about leaving your video, because there's billions of us to choose from. So that's what we're faced with. And actually that kind of puts us in a good position, because we go, okay, right, so how do we deal with this? And I think there are 3 sort of things we need to think about. And the first one is I call good manners. Applying to video, that means emulating how people sort of experience the world, really. So we experience the world level. I've got a little bugbear. We don't experience the world vertically, but more and more vertical video is happening. So I'm having to live with that. And my answer to that is, like, I could go on for hours. It's good manners. So when you're in another country, for instance, you go to France, it's good manners to speak French. So when I go to another country, for example, Instagram, it's good manners to make vertical video. But there's so much in the world with 2 eyes. You see kind of things, landscape. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. But good manners. So the eyes would tend to give you an image in your head about which is coloured right, in focus, and it gets the lighting right. So we can do that with smartphones now with just one press of the button. It used to be almost a week's course when I started at the BBC, getting the cameras just so. But a press and hold on the screen makes it sort of lock in, and you get the really crisp pictures on the bit you want. But it's not just your eyes that experience the world. You've got your brain as well, which has got a kind of creative side and a logical side. So the logical side, like I said, likes to keep things level. We don't zoom in. We don't really zoom in. We kind of jump around, and our minds give us different images. So I don't zoom, and I keep it level. And even if we're jogging around, we give ourselves a steady image. So that's why we try and keep things as steady as possible, which might involve a tripod, or it might just involve just trying to rein in, shaking everything around. And we tend to hone in on just one thing. So panning the camera around is a little bit alien to us as well. So basically, we give ourselves crisp shots, and the other part is the creative side of the brain, which gives us a sense of aesthetics, of balance, and so we can frame things which are just nicely balanced. And if we can do that, then I think we can get the audience through those first just 2 or 3 seconds, one nice, well-considered shot. Then the next thing is, we don't experience the world in one shot. We experience it in lots of different shots and different ingredients. What we do is, after 2 or 3 seconds, we break up the audience. We reset the audience's attention by giving them another shot. And we carry on that pattern for a little bit. And to do that, we can use different ingredients. So there's different types of shot. That's kind of what we call the cutaways. We can talk to people like we're doing now, so talking heads. You could bring in some music. We're using computers at the minute, so screen capture is another element we can bring in. So I think there are sort of 7 or 8 different elements we can use, graphic names and text and things, 7 or 8 different elements which video can give us, which is how we experience the world. We talk to people, we hear music, we see things, we look at the computer. So we use our different ingredients, so we don't just limit ourselves to one long shot of us talking. It sort of puts the power back in our hand, really. And the final one, you've already mentioned it a lot. We can talk about sort of instructions and things, but what humans really love are stories. So if we can just recognize the story structure of something, and then bring that into our video making, even if it's just over 40 seconds or something, then that's what will keep our audience's attention and stop them wanting to click away and actually make them want to have a positive reaction, which is actually what it's all about. It's not just about making a video. You want to have a sort of positive reaction on your audience and get them to do something positive and change your world that way. And it's through well-mannered video, using different ingredients where relevant, and thinking telling a story would be a good idea. And that was the difference going right back to many moons ago when I started this answer. When I talked about the BBC and some worked and some didn't, I realised, looking back, going, it was all the ones that worked were stories. And then having read a bit about it, there's a structure. And I went, they all match that story. And if you've got just a moment, I think one of the best videos, not now, but whenever, there's one best videos on social media, I think it's just incredible, is made by a fox called Dixie Doo. And it's the best one, well, the one I like is Dixie Doo Steals a Phone. So I think she's in some kind of sanctuary for foxes, and there's this lovely lady that looks after them. And she's just saying, don't steal the phone, don't steal the phone. And this fox runs off with the phone, but the fox changes shot. The fox puts the phone down and gets a shot of the face, and wide shot, and gets all the shots we need. And all the time, this lady's chasing her around the pen and laughing. But it's a perfect story. You've got a hero, and what do they want? They want to run off the phone. What's stopping them? They're being chased. And it's just a perfect little sort of story. And that's had, I think, 12 million views. And at the end, they say you can donate to our charity at the end. And it's a lovely video. But the point is, it's made by a fox, and it's super engaging. So if foxes can do it, we can do it as well, I think.
I love all of that. But I want to hone in on the story and the structure of a story you just mentioned there being really important and being the key ingredient in a successful video. So help people understand what a good story structure looks like.
I like stories that come from real life, so they can all go in different ways. And like I mentioned, the one when I got into LinkedIn Learning ended up on a high, but there were 99 that didn't, and they're still just as good real life sort of stories. I didn't get that job, they never phoned back or whatever. And I suppose part of it is choosing which ones to say. I don't know whether anyone would really be interested in the ones that didn't phone back. But when we've got the power, you can choose the good ones. But I think a classic story, and feel free to chip in, and I will scribble down anything you add to it and put it in my training. A beginning, a middle, and end. A hero of some description, could be you, could be someone else, that clearly wants something and something's stopping them getting it. So that's the sort of the beginning, if you can establish that. And another thing is just to pop in a situation of where we are. We need to have a sense of where we are. I've discovered it's a little throwaway thing, but it's good to get that in there. I think it comes back from our sort of cave dwelling days, when if someone said there's a saber-toothed tiger going around eating some of us, you the first thing you want to know, go, where, how close? It's just part of the storytelling DNA. We need to know where we are. So quite often people telling a story, they'll tell you where it is. So when we repeat that in our video, a minor detail. A major detail is hopefully caring about the hero, having some kind of empathy with them, which is more often the case than not. So I tend not to worry about it because humans are generally empathetic, and you've got to prove them not to be, I think. So caring about the hero, and then watching them through this sort of the middle, the struggle up and down, and whatever it is. And it could be the simplest of things, whatever it is they're struggling with. And then at a certain point that you reach the climax of the story, when it's sort of do or die, and you see what happens. And then you have a sort of the end, which is tying up all the loose ends. The resolution. So I read a book by Robert McKee called Story, about screenwriting, which I found fascinating, just brilliant. And he sort of flippantly comes up with a formula for it. So he says the beginning, with all those things, where we are, who the hero is, what the conflict is, should be 25%. The middle should be 60%, heading up to the climax, whatever happens. And then the ending should be 15%. And so I'm always watching out for that structure, especially on the viral videos that are one-take wonders, sort of one in a millions that work. You'll see, and there's quite a lot of, don't want to say it's like scone or scone, is it sloth or sloth? The slow-moving tree-dwelling animals. So does that mean nothing?
I'll go with sloth.
Or are you actually wondering what on earth I'm talking about? There are quite a lot where they're on... Well, yeah, the first two people that ever are, I think. That's lovely. There are quite a lot of viral videos about sloth. What did you say? Sloth? Let's go with sloth. Yes, sloth.
Yeah,
Sloth.
you're good.
Does that right? A sloth's on the road, and some kind-hearted chap picks them up. And it's a one-take wonder over about 40 seconds. Gets picked up, but you think, I'm watching this going, where are we? Well, we seem to be on a road somewhere in the outback. I don't know where sloths are. Is it Australia? I don't know. Somewhere like that. That's all I needed to know.
Costa Rica.
Okay, Costa Rica then. Look, I'm right behind you going, agreeing and nodding. Costa Rica, definitely. Who's the hero? Is it the sloth or is it the person? I'm not really too worried yet. It's probably the sloth. What's it want to survive? It's lying in the middle of the road and it moves too slowly. And then so that gets established. And then because it's viral, a quarter of the way through, you'll see the person's picking him up and carrying him to the tree. And then that takes the ones that are big hits that takes 60% of this 40 seconds. But then there's a lovely bit, the one I saw where the sloth seems to kind of wave and smile at the end, and I go, oh, look, it really cares. And that's in the same sort of 15% at the end. So it's story structures that sort of happen in real time are the viral ones. But my argument is we can't wait around for those 1 in a millions and hope things happen. We need to be in charge, which is when we bring in our different ingredients and sort of replicate that story, because some of the best stories don't happen in real time. They're just told that way. So that's when we sort of make those with video as well.
So is it possible that you're suggesting here that we can use that formula to go viral? Or is there still an element of random to viral?
Oh, yeah. I still haven't cracked what viral means. It's your department, isn't it? All kind of marketing and getting things, algorithms and all that kind of thing work.
You can't create viral.
No.
You can't force viral.
But my sort of view on it all is humans crave stories. That's when the engagement happens. So many times when I was starting out, I kind of just go, yeah, I know that, but forget it in my work. So my argument is let's just totally remember it in our work. And so we're making a video. We try and build I do a little exercise in my sort of training where we hold a paper plane and we have a hero trying to make it. We try and match those points. And then suddenly the video becomes a lot more engaging as a result. And it becomes easier as well, I think. If you're thinking, well, seriously, I've really only got a minute or maybe 80 seconds. 80 I like because the numbers work a bit better. If it's 80, then by 20 seconds, we need to have established where we are, who the hero is and what it is they want, which becomes a lot easier because you've only got like 3 shots and someone saying something or narration. So instead of all those big ideas, you go, oh, I've got to condense it onto that. And then the structure kind of, you make the structure work for you, I've found. Because the ones that worked for me before, they just sort of seemed right and I never really knew why. I should perhaps say this here and perhaps say that there. It took me a ludicrously long time to go, wait a minute, let's just deliberately make sure it's a story. So if I'm tasked with making a video now, I'll go, well, what is the story? I've tried making 15-second ones for Facebook because I thought, right, I'm trying to make it 15 seconds. So I'm going, okay, apply your theory. I'll work out quarter of 15. It's about 4 seconds, isn't it? So within the first 4 seconds, I need to have established who the hero is and what the conflict is, which is one very short line, but I've got to make sure that works. So it's kind of bringing that theory in at every stage and then knowing that that's because it's a story, it'll be engaging naturally. So yeah, it's kind of a mechanism, I suppose.
It'll be useful for our listeners to see an example of your work, and we'll put the links in the show notes. So we'll be sure to get the right links from you, something that people can really see what we're talking about here.
I'll send you one I made happily through LinkedIn. Someone said, can you come and run a course for us in Abu Dhabi? I said, yeah. So I ended up on the surreal sort of 4 days in the desert in Abu Dhabi, like you don't. But somehow I did. And they were having a nice comms team. They were having a lovely retreat in the desert at this oasis kind of place. But they were trying to get to the top of the sand dune by sunset. And I thought, well, I'm teaching people how to make things with their phone. So I picked up my phone and sort of followed that story. And I'll send you that link. And if you do end up watching it, you'll see the hero I chose to follow. She didn't end up, she was the one person that decided, I'm not going up the sand dune. And I tell you what, and I went, what? And I was filming her at the bottom. And I'll tell you what, sand dunes are pretty hard to run up when the sun's trying to set in sort of trainers. Yeah, if I ever do write a book, I think it's going to be called Sprinting Up Sand Dunes because it's not easy. So I chose the wrong person. And there's so much kind of didn't really become a story. But what I love about it is I stuck to the structure and I captured it rather than just letting the whole thing just never be told, just sort of disappear. It's just like when you got into video, it's like a currency, I think, if you've got a good story like that. And everyone that watches is going, I'd quite like to work for Siemens. I'd quite like to work for Siemens because they care about their people and actually caring is one of their values. And that's kind of what's behind all the stories is if you can pin them on one of their values, you go, see, like that charity I told you about, that's clearly one of their values was caring for the clients. And that just comes through every story. That's what shines through. And that's what I think is so powerful about it. So I'll send you that link. You can see how I struggled to make it into a story by trying to make up conflict because they were really cool. They're really efficient going, if we say we'll be there by sunset, we will. And I was going, oh, that's not a story. So yeah.
I love it. Human condition.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, you say you chose the wrong person, but I would argue that you perhaps chose the perfect person for that because to show the person who doesn't make it to the top, who doesn't hit the success peak, is the ultimate story of caring. Like you even care for the people who don't make it.
Yeah, I think perhaps I haven't told that well enough. She was just a little, I don't know, just said, I've chosen not to go up. She was super successful herself, but just went, and I was filming her at the bottom, getting my 5 shots, and went, oh.
Okay.
So I think really the only person that did miss the sunset was me. I should have been following someone else up. But just the quality of the phone. And the point is there wasn't a camera crew out there, so it was only being captured by the phone. And I love to think that anyone could kind of make those stories, not just with a few shots and going, that kind of works, send it out, and that's how the kind of values get shared, and the goodness spreads, I suppose. So that's what we mean by democratizing video, I think.
Thank you for saying that. I was just about to bring us back around to that. We mentioned it in the intro. What on earth is democratizing video?
It's the idea that, not unique to me by any means, it's the idea that I get a bit carried away with it. I'm thinking that video, it's a right, basically, and it's a form of communication like sort of reading and writing. And I think now it used to be you had to have a camera crew or a television station to make video, but now everyone can make it and should be able to make it. And there's just a few little technicalities that need sorting out of when it works well, in the same way that you don't suddenly write a successful novel when you sit down to write a book. I think making a video is much easier than writing a successful novel. But there's a few little elements that come to it. But yes, it's the idea that you don't keep having to ask someone else to come and make a video for you and get the funding. Because I've been there, I was that person. I've seen how it's kind of, you're fenced in with the budgets and people wanting to get the value for the money for the budget. So it has to be on this subject. And it's all just, you're in a kind of cage almost. There's a lot of people working on it. Everyone wants it done slightly differently. And the video kind of becomes a bit kind of crumpled in a way because there's lots of different ideas coming in. Whereas the democratization, I suppose, is people with the phones in their pockets going, I can make a story about this. And this is my slant on it, and these are my values, and this is my voice, and it's kind of a sort of beautiful thing, really. And I think it's a very good thing, because the other alternative was me kind of holding on to all my cameras and going, "No, you need to pay me to make your video. How dare you think about making video on your own?" Which I think is not right. I did get some grief at the beginning, going, "So you're teaching people how to do what you do?" And I'm going, "Yeah," and they're going, "Well, that's giving your job away." I was going, "No, it's brilliant." And there's the work to be had there as well. It's just a different sort. But
it's a different mindset on it, which I think is really important. And I'm really interested on your thoughts on like the technology, because we are certainly in a technology explosion right now with AI. And there's a lot of questions on authenticity. And a lot of what you've just spoken about is the importance of authenticity in video and what that allows for the storytelling to be really real and authentic. But now there's this other side, the darker side, which you can create fake videos and deep fake videos and kind of some worrying things that people will talk about on the internet about being concerned about. What are your thoughts on sort of where that's going and any concerns on it?
Definitely concerns, yes, and no conclusion. I don't know where it's going. It's very interesting. The advice that I've heard and I'm sticking with is AI won't take our jobs. It's just people that work with AI that will. So I'm kind of, making AI as much a friend as possible. I must get around to, I had a little go on one of the free apps that makes talk into it for 5 minutes, and then you have your own generated presenter, which is you. And then you type the script in and AI Rob just starts to go through the motions, and it's fantastic. You can still robot-like, but how soon that will change, I don't know. So I don't know the answer really, but certainly the lack of trust is going to be interesting if people don't really believe that really happened. I don't see the point of trying to simulate stuff in our own worlds with all the goodness that's going on. So I've started seeing, I've got no answers. I could just dither for hours now because I just don't know.
There aren't answers. There's a lot that we're talking about, and I just think the conversation's interesting.
I've seen some footage of typing into AI, I want this video of this dog walking along a window ledge, for example. And the video is stunningly good. It's just a Dalmatian walking along a window ledge, slightly dangerous, but it's AI. I don't really see the point of watching that if it's just been made by AI, and I just want to see real things. Will humans just start watching human things, and will AI crack on with its own thing and AI will watch that? I don't know. But then that said, some of my favorite films use AI and go, wow, look at that. So I really don't know. But who knows what's next? The fact we can make an AI Rob as a presenter. I mean, subtitles is another thing. Part of Good Manners is subtitles for accessibility. And that used to be a whole job when you could send stuff away for a few days and it would come back, or it would take me an hour to do a minute. And now on free apps, it takes you like 10 seconds and it's heard everything and written it out, and you just change the capitals and gone. That's incredibly good, but it's a whole sort of career location that's presumably dying. I don't know, dying away because so it's kind of whoa, what's happening? And someone said your job's safe as a presenter. You will always need human presenters. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I don't see my job as just a presenter anymore. I'm kind of I think I wear 6 hats. I can't remember what they all are, but let's try to script writer, trainer, etc. Yeah.
When you're taking off on an airplane and the safety video rolls, now more often than not, it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
Partly, I think, because of accessibility. It can show people from all walks of life. It makes it more engaging, which is a point that you mentioned, what's going to engage the audience. So we don't necessarily need to see ourselves real, but I think what happens with humans is we discern what's real, and that will dictate our behavior in what we watch or listen to. So people can go out there and do as much deep fake as they want, but we'll also become more attuned to that, I believe, because critical thinking does still exist. And I think we'll just start to be more selective in what we watch and listen to. As a writer, I can absolutely pick up when something's been written by GPT, and I don't object to it at all. But what I do object to is when I see the canned version in something that I'm expected to read. And I'll just switch off and move to the next thing. To your point, it's the attention span as well. And what is it that grabs our attention? It's authenticity.
Yeah, two things. There's an editing app called Descript, which translates everything into basically a Word document. So I had these things where I'd talk to someone. You probably get the hang of it. I can't keep things short if I'm trying to get to the bottom of a story, especially when these are about award-winning students. They're just brilliant. You can't just talk to them for 5 minutes and hope to chop it down to 2. So some went on for close to an hour. And there were such powerful stories. But one chap's first answer, honestly, was 35 minutes, and I couldn't stop him because everything he said was, oh my God, wow. Luckily, I just found Descript, so that changed it into a Word document. So the first thing he says, well, take out all the ums, and suddenly you've lost. I think it was 8 minutes of the 50 had gone with ums and hesitations. I went, whoa, okay. So I don't have to sit through an hour and edit it out. And then you think, well, I really have to have him saying that line and that line and that line. I tried to let AI have a go at it. So can you make it this? And it just picked out single words, and it was like unwatchable. I said, okay, so I'll have to think about it. And the thing I noticed, this chap, a time, let's just put it that way. And at one point, I can see his eyes reddening and starting to well up. As an emotional story, that is clearly where the emotion is. That line has to be in. And I told myself that line is in whatever. And I don't know when AI would ever spot that. And I don't really want AI spotting it. It was kind of me feeling that this was my chat and I had to get it down to 2 minutes. This is the 2 minutes I want to represent that chat. But AI really helped me get the initial hour down to about 10 minutes going, that's the stuff I want to work on. So it really helped there. And someone else has mentioned I'm really not very good at interviewing, trying to get the answers out of people. I get a bit flustered with how to ask the question. But it turns out it's never done me harm because whoever I'm interviewing takes pity on me because I'm so bad at asking questions. They always give me such good answers. So I've always got the answers I wanted. But apparently there's AI that will do the interviews for you, which I'm quite interested in because it'll be a human response to an AI question, but still you'll get some material that you wouldn't have had before and you've got something to work with. So I'm watching it all. It's really interesting. And then we've got the Apple VR goggles are coming out. AI presenters going to pop up everywhere. And is that going to become normal? And woo, where's it all going?
We don't know. We don't know.
It's exciting.
Technology, like new stuff comes up all the time, and some stuff we adopt and some stuff we chuck out. And some stuff takes a while, but it'll come back into the mainstream because we just weren't ready for it yet. And that's the fascinating part. And I'm totally with you. It's like the wait and watch and see, learn the tools, because you're right. It's not the AI taking your job, it's the people who are using it, because that's sort of like the key part that most people miss. They think the robot's just going to come and take over their job. Well, someone has to program the robot. Somebody has to work with the robot. There's a part of that job that's still there, right? So how are you the one using the tools? How are you the one training other people? So it's just we have to evolve our thinking of work. And I think it's going to happen. And we're going to look back and go, okay, that was just a different revolution. We had the Industrial Revolution. We all survived. And I was thinking about this the other day about being a creative, right? So we're all creatives in this space. So we understand this. Like creatives are, I think, going to always be needed in history because we always have been, right? Creativity has just evolved and we've just evolved with the tools. And now we just have more tools that make us faster, better at our jobs. So creativity is always going to be a human desire. So learn the tools. So learn how your smartphone works, learn how to create the videos, how to tell the stories, how to use the technology so that you can be better at the creative side of things. Because I think people want creativity. The reason why we're addicted to TikTok and Instagram is because it's all stories. It's entertainment, it's creativity, and the good ones stand out. They're the ones that go viral, right? So we scroll through a lot of bad ones too, for sure. But for the most part, like that's the difference. And it's the people who learned the tool that get the viral video, or because they've told the perfect story. And like you said, sometimes it's a shot in a barrel and it's the 1 in 100 one that you post. You don't always know when it's going to be. But the point is you've done 100 of them. You know, you've asked 100 times. You might have only gotten one yes. But the point is the doing, the taking the action, the not stopping because you're afraid of the tool, the rejection, the whatever it is. That's the message I think I'm getting through today.
Absolutely. And those viral videos, the ones you see, I think are the ones that I think I've mentioned that sort of that match a story. So it's kind of working with the tools we've got to not leave it to chance and make sure everything we do, it is a story each time. I never thought I would, but I found some old vinyl records of mine in the attic, and I found a Bluetooth player, and I play those and I think, oh, this is nice. I'm just putting on, and so I wonder how much we'll sort of look back. I've got an old film camera as well, and going, oh, this was nice. And I'm just interested how we come back to that. And it's not just me doing that. There's a bounce back. So I wonder, as AI goes further and further, how much we'll kind of bounce back. And you talk about creativity. I wonder if we'll all just theatre tickets we'll all just want to go and sit in the theatre where there's no chance of any AI interfering with sort of human sort of art. I wonder if we'll all kind of shuffle away somehow. We'll see.
I love that perspective. Is there a little touch of nostalgia going on behind you in your office there, Rob, with that orange telephone on the desk?
I suppose so, yeah. You can see over the other shoulder there's an orange typewriter as well I found in a charity shop. Can you see that? It was fluke, really. Ended up working at home because it's much easier, but I used to have an office and I needed a phone for it. So I just went, having one of the old ones, and I might as well go orange. I used to work with a client, and he loved ringing me because I know your phone's ringing in the old-fashioned way. I go, hello, and then ring him on that. But it does still work, yes. So then I got the typewriter as well because I just liked it. Then I put them both on the desk because I thought that when I did my presenting, it needed some colour. Someone told me, you've got a brand going on there with a shirt like this one and the orange. I went, yeah, that was always the idea. And then it's just fluke. But then I worked out, well, how can I explain what video is? And I went, oh, okay. It just so happened. I said, well, humans like to talk to each other. That's kind of how we sort of taken over the planet, really. We could type everyone a letter. That's going to take quite a long time. Or we could phone someone. It was just a fluke. But actually, we prefer video now. So that's what we're going to talk about. So they're both kind of old school ways of communicating, which were sort of fine in their time, but we've kind of moved on to video. So I could argue there's a point, but really it's just my nice old orange phone. I use Rubik cubes in my training as well. And the Bayeux tapestry, if that means anything to you, not living so close to Bayeux as I do. The 1066 tapestry with William the Conqueror. I use that as an example of, I keep doing that. I've made a little model of it and I talk about that's how we edit. We roll the edges of the tapestry and we can sometimes cut it, but you shouldn't cut a tapestry, and that's how we edit. And interestingly, if nothing's been interesting so far, I measured my tapestry because you think surely when they sew these things 1,000 years ago, but it's all got level shots. They're all in focus because they're sewn with needle and thread, and they've got words on them like narration. It's like 1,000 years ago. It's kind of like how we make video. But surely it should tell a story. So I started measuring it for my 25%, 60%, 15%. And I was going, well, how long is it? Surely the conflict is wanting your country and then getting invaded. But I couldn't make the ending. I couldn't make the maths work. And I was going, oh, it's really annoying that it doesn't work on the tapestry. But then I read there's a bit ripped off the end and lost. And I went, ha, I knew it. I could tell you how much has been ripped off the end with my formula. I know exactly how much has been ripped off. So that really cheered me up. So medieval super sleuth. I like that. So I like the old school stuff. And I like trying to avoid jargon. There's a lot of jargon in video as well. I like avoiding that. So I've come up with my own. Just makes sense. B-roll, cutaways, all that kind of thing. I call it stuff happening. It's not caught on yet. I don't like rules. Do this and
right?
Yeah. And some trainings I see, and what we're told, you've got to have lighting. You've got to do this, and you've got to do this. and it takes all the passion out of it. So I come at it as kind of taking the approach that the audience is key, and once we start thinking what they want, everything kind of makes sense, and we can give them that or not. I like the old school stuff, yeah.
It adds to your story, that's for sure. So, Rob, I'd love to flip the script on you because we're the podcast hosts and we've been asking all the questions and it's been super fun so far. So I'd love to sort of throw you the curveball and ask you, do you have a question for Vicky and I?
The interesting thing for me, I suppose, is first of all, I worked in media like you two did and did okay. Became a sort of video journalist and did okay, and worked independently, did okay, and then thought I'd like to teach this, and this is how I teach it, and this is how I teach it, and I now, lay a tapestry, Rubik's Cube, explain all the different angles, and everything sort of makes sense. And then that kind of seems to be half of my work, and the other half is suddenly become marketing. I say suddenly, over the last 10 years, more and more scratching my head marketing. And how do I get this out there? How do I get in front of the right people? I'm lucky the feedback I get. I did some courses with the Guardian masterclasses over here. So I'd have 100 people on Zoom, and with one that went that didn't have a single question about the technicalities. I thought, cracked it. I've said everything I needed to, and everyone seems very happy. So I've seen it work. But trying to, as a business entrepreneur, trying to emulate that every time, I must have tried dozens of different ways and gone, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. Facebook ads, that will work. No, they don't work. Or I'm just not very good at them. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the best way to sort of get your message out there and to prompt you a little bit. Is it just organic, helpful content, building your tribe? Is that the best way? That's my question. Or is there another way you can tell me that's even better?
Such a good question. And I think the thing that most people struggle with figuring out, because, marketing is such a experiment, and what works today may not even work tomorrow. So it's definitely a tricky one, but there's a couple of things that we know for sure definitely works. And one thing we've been talking about storytelling this whole time is having other people tell your story. So what I mean by that is using testimonials from people who have taken your class in your marketing in a way to have somebody else say how great your class was, for example, or what they learned or what they got out of it. Now, if you can get them to do that on video, all the better, because that increases authenticity and believability, right? Because that's really key. Because you're trying to get people to trust you. So if people are going to give you their money for something, if they're going to buy your course or hire you to coach them one-on-one or whatever it is that you're doing, anybody I'm talking about here, it's getting them to trust you is sometimes the hardest part. So what you also said about showing up and teaching and sharing organically online is also massively successful for a lot of people, because again, you just increase that trust factor, because I'm starting to get to know who Rob is and what Rob's all about. Do I believe Rob? Do I trust that he's going to teach me something that I really want to know? Is what he's teaching valuable to me? And if it is, okay, here's my money. That's going to work, because I'm going to say, this is aligns with what I'm wanting. It used to take 7 times, 7 touch points for people to trust you and buy from you, right? So it would take that many times. And back in the day, it'd be a newspaper ad and a radio ad and maybe a magazine, and maybe you get on the news if you're launching something. So we would have all those really big, expensive, hard to do things. And then you'd go to the next stage where everyone was building websites and starting social media. But now we're in this flooded era of massive information, right? It's coming at us from all angles, and social media, there's so many platforms. It takes more than 7 times. That's the bad news. It takes a lot more, but it's the consistency of the showing up, building the trust over time, using other people to help tell your story that I think is the most effective. That would be my top recommendation. What are you thinking, Vicky?
I love that advice. You're so good at giving this advice. And yes, the only other thing I would add would be to flip it back on you, because I also am a life coach and I do believe that we all have the answers within us. So here's the question for you, Rob, about your marketing. And that is, how can you use your own formula on your marketing? So everything that Laura just talked about with building trust, everything that Laura just said, put that into the formula of the 20, the 40, the 15. What is your story for your marketing? And so how much effort do you put into building trust, the beginning, the start of your story, connecting with your audience? and be clear on who that audience is. How much do you spend in the middle in delivering? And how much at the end do you pay attention to having that client become a repeat client and looking at ways for them to become a repeat client, either through a referral or a testimonial or coming back to use your services themselves?
Oh, that's good. I'm spending all my time in the first 25% trying there because I know my 60% is ready, and I have such ideas for getting to the final bit of working with people and really supporting them in whatever, call it pioneers, whichever direction they're interested in going. So let's go, I'll help. Where are you going with your video making? Because I know what I do, but I'm BBC old school. What would you do? I know I can't wait to get to that bit. I'm stuck. You've got to get through the beginning bit. I'm not stuck, isn't the right word. And video testimonials. That's so good. It's something it's like standing in front of the camera. I think it's hard. I find it hard asking people for a video testimonial. Luckily, I've just got this new little thing going where we work together for a few weeks. And after a few weeks, I was talking to one lady and she was going, I can do it all. I said, I was ready for it. Do you mind if I just press record? At the right moment when she was elated, I did get a very good test, but I've done nothing with it. And you're so right. When I'm thinking of buying, of course, it's what I look for. It's like stories, just of course I should use them. It's like that moment when, of course I should use video testimonials. Have a word with yourself.
And you have a formula for it. So you could even provide a couple of questions to your clients to answer. That will shape into your formula beautifully.
Yeah, because if you turn a camera on somebody and say, give me a video testimonial, they're going to be like, They're not going to be able to. But if you're just on it, say like we're doing now, like we're recording this podcast, we're just here and we could say, hey, Rob, what'd you think of this podcast? And you could just say, oh, it was great. I had a great time. Of course, you had a great time. But you know what I mean? You could just say whatever you want to say. And then we could clip that video, ask permission, always ask permission to use testimonials. But then it comes across natural because it is natural. It's actually how they were feeling in that moment. So that's just a little tip for everybody out there. We're using Zoom. We're always recording stuff anyway. Ask the question at the end. Was this great? What do you think? Give me some feedback. You get the feedback. If it's usable, it's great tool for marketing just in general, because other people talking great about your business is so much better than you talking great about your business. So that's just a little tip for everyone out there.
I've got another little tip along the same lines, and I think it sews up something I said earlier. I said I'm not very good at interviewing, and that's for exactly that reason. Getting the question right is not easy without sort of taking the answers away from someone sort of mentioning the words that you want them to use. That's kind of one of the rules. If you don't use them, hopefully they will, or if you do use them, are you leading them, all that kind of stuff. But yes, instead of just how was the podcast, my tip is you ask two questions, because it's not a closed question. So you don't ask a closed question. Was the podcast okay? Is going to get a yes. But try and ask 2 or 3 questions. So for me, it'd be, how did you find the podcast? What were you expecting from it? Did you get that? And was there other stuff? So that's kind of 4 questions. And then you'll get a much better answer, because the person will talk in sentences rather than just monosyllabic yeses and nos. And they will consider all that stuff and give you an answer that you hadn't really expected. So yes, I did have a little question like that up my sleeve for this testimonial I did. I think it was, what brought you to this? What were you trying to achieve with video? And what was it that was sort of holding you back? And what drew you to this course, and how was it? And then, so she talked about how before and after, and her answer was a story, before and after. And as part of my training, I used to just film people to say just any story, and people just naturally talk in stories anyway, which is another powerful thing. So I use an example of someone just telling this 30-second things, and you can split it. And people just do it naturally. So they're good to be aware of and sort of use. And then if you start listening to chat show hosts, well, certainly over here, you'll start to hear them use 2 or 3 or 4 question techniques, and you get such good answers from people. So once I was at a screen opening of Batman 3, I think it was, with George Clooney. I was so bad at this. When I was working for one television station, they had me out there at 1 a.m. And suddenly they didn't think he was going to show him. Rod, George Clooney's here. So everyone went, Ruh! I had 10 seconds to get a question ready. And it was so bad. It was something like, George, we were in an old disused power station in London. George, do you think the Gothic setting of Battersea Power Station is good for Batman? Which is just the worst question. And his face said, that's the worst question I've ever heard. And he laughed at me. He went, yeah. And walked on. I went, it was such a bad question. To be honest, I still can't really think. 20 years on, I still can't really think of one. I still I'm still struggling. So whenever George Clooney pops up, I get a kind of nervous tick, and I still can't think of one. So, like I say, I'm not very good. I'm not very good at that. So
I can tell you something you're very, very good at, and that would be your stand-up comedy routine.
Yeah. Yes.
Aside from your video skills, of course.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. This has been so much fun. Laura's
cheeks are hurting. Literally, I've got to massage them. They're hurting. I'm glad. And I hope everyone listening had some good laughs along the way too, because this has been such a fun conversation, but also such an important one, because we forget the power of storytelling, but yet that's how we've learned all of human history, is through stories. So it is a part of the creative world we live in. It's something that's always going to be around, and we can learn to use them effectively, learn to just cut them down to those 10-second viral clips. But it takes a lot of practice and a lot of work. But it is so fun to have conversations like this. And Rob, you've brought so much light and joy to this podcast today. I hope everyone's enjoyed it as much as I certainly have. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing your amazing stories and bringing all this joy to us today. So, Rob, thank you so much. We really appreciated this.
I've taken so much away from it. I've been scribbling down everything you've been saying. Life coach, video testimonials. I love it. I've learned loads. Thank you.
Oh, our pleasure. Truly. Thank you, Rob.
It's been real. Thank you, Rob.